Organizer, negotiator, and educator. He teaches the political economy course in the Labor Studies Department at Lane College. Please welcome Michael Eisenscher.
Thank you. I reflected earlier today on the fact that in 2001, when this tragedy began to unfold, I certainly did not expect to be standing before you today talking about why we need to end it. And I suspect that most of you also did not contemplate 9 years ago that we would be almost a decade later still involved in this terrible conflict. I want to make a number of points about why we've got to get out, and then I'm going to share with you some information. First, the war is illegal. It's illegal because we invaded a sovereign country that committed no act of any sort towards the United States or its interests. We invaded it chasing a bandit, a terrorist, because we suspected he was there. That does not justify or make legal what we did. It continues to be illegal under international law. The war is immoral. It has turned an entire nation into a nation of victims. Innocent people who had no conflict with the United States, no interest in harming any Americans, have been brutalized, murdered, occupied, terrorized, displaced, turned into refugees in one of the poorest countries in the world. And we continue to victimize them every day we are there. The war is unsustainable. The population is overwhelmingly opposed to the U.S. presence. The man known as President Karzai is considered little more than the mayor of Kabul because he can't leave the city and operate as any other political leader would anywhere else in this country. It's unsustainable because the population is opposed to what we are doing, and its resistance grows the longer we are there. It's unaffordable. We have expended in excess of $300 billion in Afghanistan alone, $1 trillion if you add the Iraq war, since 2001. We are now on a pace to spend on average another $100 billion every year we stay. And that cost is inevitably going to increase, either because we add more troops, or because we suffer more losses, or because we simply add more armaments in an effort to overcome technologically what we cannot overcome with military personnel. It's a waste of treasure and blood. The militarism that we are practicing in the world is bleeding the treasury dry. Our military spending has doubled in the same period that our economy has shrunk from 32 to 23% of global output. And it's ecologically unsustainable. Our military in the world consumes more petrol fuel than almost all the militaries in the world combined. It's an unsustainable ecological disaster in the making. It will not be improved by putting solar panels on drones. Now, we paid for it in blood. In U.S. military blood, 1,265 dead, over 15,000 wounded. In California alone, more than 100 dead and 500 wounded, and that's just up to May 12th. Let's try this. All right. 20% of our troops suffer traumatic brain injury, 35% post-traumatic stress, 21% are treated for mental health problems, 1 new casualty from either Iraq or Afghanistan walks into a VA facility every 5 minutes, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We now have more amputees from these two conflicts than from the Civil War. 15 to 17% of our troops suffer depression. In 2009 alone, 98 committed suicide. 1,868 others tried and failed. For each suicide, 18 others attempted. What about in Afghanistan? It is troubling that the United States kept absolutely no records on civilian deaths prior to 2007. By some estimates, there have been 13,400, and by others up to 33,000 Afghans slaughtered since 2001. In 2009 alone, 2,412, which was a 14% increase over the year before, another 3,566 were wounded. 3.7 million Afghans turned into refugees and 1 million more displaced in their own country. That's out of a population of 28.4 million. 40% unemployment, life expectancy 44 years, illiteracy 85%, and amongst women almost 100%. Infant mortality 155 per 1,000 live births, compared to the United States 6.3. Child mortality aged 5 and under 257 per 1,000, compared to 8 in the United States. Our military consumes 94% of all the resources we spend in Afghanistan, and 6% goes to civilian projects of one sort or another. That is completely flipped from what the standard military Bible tells you about counterinsurgency warfare, that 80% of the funds should be spent on civilian projects and 20% on the military. So even by the military's own playbook, we're doing it wrong. In California, we're suffering a deficit of $19 billion. Federal aid to California is down almost 15%. In 2010, California taxpayers' share of the Pentagon budget was $89 billion, 4.5 times the deficit. Since 2001, our taxpayers have paid $132 billion for the cost of these two wars, and that's before the $33 billion that was added on this year. Out of the median family taxes, $5,500 for a median family in federal taxes, 30% went to the Pentagon. Now, I cite these last figures because we have to talk about more than simply the Afghan war. We've got to talk about the foreign policies and the political direction of the country that gets us into